Taxi slash Uber slash Lyft drivers of Reddit, what are the most interesting slash entertaining slash fucked up situations that happened to you during the shift? I picked up 4 guys wearing neon green tutus. The guy in the front seat looks at me while I'm driving and says, "Don't do drugs." Then proceeds to snort cocaine from some sort of vial. I smiled and said, "Please don't do drugs in my car." I was unemployed at the time. Quit a job due to an abusive slash toxic work environment. Had recently graduated a coding boot camp, but wasn't having any luck landing new opportunities. Bills were piling up, and honestly I was losing hope. I'm about to call it a night. Driving drunks around gets tiring, when I decide what's one more. Turns out these 3 older women wanted to do some gambling in the next state over, and had trouble finding a ride. I said yes, figured I'd just call it a night after. We get talking, turns out one of them is an IT consultant. They decide to pay me basically $100 an hour to hang out till they are done and drive them all home. We ended up connecting. She revised my resume and put me in touch with some references of hers. I ended up making a good buck off the fares alone, and also ended up completely turning my life around by landing a dream job with a little bit of help. I wrote her a sincere thank you once I accepted the new offer, and she replied with, "Help others because you can." Not a day goes by where I don't think about how lucky I am. Friend of mine visiting New York City took a taxi back to his hotel late night. Riding in the back he found a small women's clutch purse thing. Inside was the ID of a 19-year-old girl and the business card of a police officer in a town neighboring state. The police officer had the same last name as the girl, so my friend figured the officer was the girl's father and she carried the card in case she ever needed to get herself out of a traffic ticket or something. My friend figures he can leave a voicemail on the officer's business number when he gets back to the hotel, then leave the purse at the hotel front desk for the girl to come pick up. So that is exactly what he does as soon as he gets up to the hotel room. About 3 hours later, now 3 or 4 AM, he is in a deep sleep when loud knocks on his hotel room door wake him up. It's a bunch of NYPD detectives who want to know all the details of how he found the purse, like where he originally hailed the cab, etc. Turns out the girl was indeed the daughter of the cop on the business card, and she had been missing for a few days. The discovery of her clutch purse was the first sign of her that had popped up. My friend had paid for the cab via credit card and had kept the receipt, so he was able to pass that along to the detectives who, presumably, were able to use that to track down the cab driver and find out any information he could provide. Ultimately my friend doesn't know what happened. The cops never contacted him again. I picked up a guy who either refused to pay a hooker from the night before or didn't know she was a lady of the night. She proceeded to follow us. Finally he gets a call from someone. Seemed like it scared him because he told me to bring him back to his place. She followed us back there. I promptly left. Probably should have kicked him out sooner. Drove for Uber for a bit. Once picked up this guy who ended up being a magician. It's 2 AM and had to drive him into Manhattan to his apartment. It was weird cause nobody was around. The city was dead quiet for some reason. He sat in the front seat and told me stories the whole ride there. Once there he told me to get out and did a magic trick for me. He made 4 $100 bills turn into $4 bills and gave me it for a tip. My most memorable would be, I picked up a girl coming home from work. We started talking about my education and what I did before Uber, and it just turned out that her company was looking for my skills. She gave me her card. I shot her my resume and 2 years later I'm still working for that company and have been promoted to a junior executive LVL. I've never had to drive an Uber since. Back in the 70s as a student I drove a taxi in the weekends and some evenings/nights to earn some extra money. One time, late at night I got a call to pick a guy up at his home. At arrival the guy hops in the back with a sports bag with few rifles sticking out. I could see that in my rear view mirror. He wanted me to drive out of town to some B road, and in the middle of nowhere he told me to stop the car on a small road in an area with a lot of trees, hopped out of the car with his bag, came back few minutes later without the bag, and told me to head back to his place and drop him off. He gave me a huge tip, and this is the first time I ever mentioned this happened. I drove a taxi in a suburb of Boston for a while in the 80s. One day, a kid in his 20s with a baseball bat hailed me and asked me to take him to a pharmacy nearby. It was the middle of the day, so I assumed he was coming from softball practice. He told me to wait, then he went into the pharmacy and left the bat in the car. A minute or two later, he came running out of the pharmacy with the pharmacist right behind him. Was this guy nuts? What kind of criminal uses a cab as a getaway car? I casually reached back and locked the door just as he reached the cab. He fumbled with the handle, realizing that he left his only defensive weapon inside, and then ran off. I let the pharmacist into the cab, and then the two of us made a slow pursuit of the guy while reporting his location over the radio. No cell phones. Eventually, he was so exhausted that I got out of the cab and held him until the police arrived. I had to testify in court and identify him. Not the sharpest tool in the shed. Not me, but my mom. She was delivering Uber Eats last winter to some guy a little out of town. The location was a bit odd, but she went with it. Just outside our city on one of the side roads by some train tracks, she parked her car and looked around for any houses. None. There was a train stop nearby, and suddenly my mom noticed a guy waddling through the deep snow towards her. "Are you?" Random name. Calling him Bob. Bob. He nodded, took the food, and waddled towards the train. Suddenly it starts up and continues down the tracks. This guy deadass ordered Uber Eats while conducting a train. Picked a guy up from a strip club around 5 PM. He had clearly been there for a while and was talkative drunk. He started talking to a friend on his phone and kept saying he couldn't go into detail because he had a lady driver. He told me he was going home and then taking his daughter out to a basketball game because there was a after game concert she was very excited about. Little did he know, or I know, because I was just following the GPS, that he had been routed to her high school. Dude's in a rumpled suit, smells like strip club, and is clearly not sober. He got a resolved look, handed me a few singles, said thanks for the ride boo, and just hitched up his pants like a man embracing his shitty situation. I matched with a girl on Tinder by accident, and she messaged me saying she liked PBR, which is in one of my pictures. Being awkward and not wanting to waste her time, I just unmatched without saying anything. Around this time I was near the beginning of my brief tenure as an Uber driver, and who the fuck do you think I pick up the very next day? I immediately try to slouch hoping she doesn't recognize me, and after 5 minutes of silence, right when I think I'm in the clear, she says, "Hey, did we match on Tinder?" To which I reply, "I don't think so." Then she says, "Yeah, I messaged you about PBR, and then you unmatched me." And I just let out a feeble kind of "oh, yeah." Then I look down at my GPS, and there's 25 minutes left in this ride. I did not get a tip. The last Uber rider I ever picked up was a teenage kid, maybe 16ish, and what I would assume was his girlfriend. They got in the backseat, and after a few minutes started to hear some unsettling sounds. Look back and she is straight up blowing him in my backseat. It was like 3 in the afternoon and I picked them up from the mall. Who does that? Not a driver, but a pretty frequent Uber/Lyft customer. So I was going up to my buddy's house in NH, and it was 25-minute drive in me, and the driver started talking. I asked him basically this exact question. My Lyft driver said one day late at night he picked up 2 dudes in Boston. They were both pretty drunk or high. One dude is in the front seat and one is the back. The guy up front starts fiddling with something in his pocket. His friend tells him to stop and just wait nervously. The dude in the front seat proceeds to pull out some cocaine and a credit card and proceeds to do it on the dashboard. The driver looks over and freaks out and tells him to put away his stuff or he kicks them out of the car. He puts it away, the dudes get dropped off, and the driver proceeds to call Lyft support. He basically says I did coke off my dashboard, don't accept his credit card anymore. Bonus story, while going to work I asked another driver this question. The driver said a bunch of guys were having a bachelor party. They were super cool and excited, hitting the strip club and the bars, and they already pre-gamed. These brothers were such brothers that they straight up invited the driver to party with them. The driver said okay. He partied with them all night long after closing the app, and I think he might be friends with some of them now. He said he had an awesome time, and so did the guy who was gonna get married. He brought them all around, and they had an awesome time. I have several. The first that comes to mind was a 78Y/old lady that insisted that I needed to know about the hookup she was going home from. She went into descriptive detail about her sexual life. When she realized that I wasn't into that conversation, she decided that talking about Trump was the next best thing. The other was a guy that I picked up at about 5 PM on a Wednesday. This dude was probably the most drunk person I have ever met. He kept calling me smart guy and asking me if I spoke French and German. When I told him no, he insisted that I did and called me a liar. I had to ask him if he wanted to take the tollway, and he said it was up to me since I was the smart guy. I ended up taking the tollway, and he yelled at me asking why I went that way. I ended up basically giving him two options: get out of the car on the tollway or shut the fuck up. When I dropped him off, it took him 10 minutes to get out of the car. His house was right before a cul-de-sac, so when I came back around he was standing in the road, so I couldn't pass. Dude was a psycho. I used to Uber/Lyft in Vermont. Picked up 4 20-something-year-old kids from New York who were visiting Burlington. I drove them back to their Airbnb in Stowe, a little less than an hour away. We are having a great time doing sing-alongs to David Bowie. I get to Stowe and the GPS is leading me off the main road. Then I turn again onto a dirt road, and then another dirt road. It's like 11 PM and I don't see a single light from a house, a car, or a street light anywhere. I jokingly say, "Man, where are you guys taking me?" One guy replies, "This is where we are going to kill you." Mind you, I have a twisted sense of humor and have actually used this as a joke when I first met the woman who is now my wife, but I immediately followed it up with joking and laughter. I share this with my passengers, and another one replies, "Well, we really are just going to skin you alive." At this point, I ask them to please stop messing with me, and that the joke is lost at this point. I kid you not. Someone replies, "Don't worry, we'll make sure we put olive oil all over your skin so it doesn't dry out." Finally we get to the location and they invite me in for a beer. I decline. In fact, I declined to pull in the driveway. As they were getting out of the car, someone dropped their jewel in the car and needed help finding that. No chance in hell I was going to help them find it, as I wanted to be ready to bolt at a moment's notice and I wasn't going to put myself in any vulnerable situations. I went home after that one. I'm a pretty big guy, so it takes a lot for me to feel unsafe, but this was one time where I was absolutely terrified, being an Uber driver. Thanks so much for watching. We here at Club Pepe appreciate your support. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to see more content of superior quality like this on our channel.